Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming to this SELEP board meeting. I'm Sarah Dance. I'm the Deputy Chair standing in for Chris Brodie, who's unavailable today. So you have me chairing the meeting. Thank you all for coming. The meeting is being recorded, as you all probably know. Obviously, if we can stick to our normal rules around Zoom, so please raise your hand or use the raise hand function if you want to speak, and I'll try and make sure I come to you. Shout if I haven't come to you, please. If you cannot, please use the chat function because that can't be seen by members of the public, so we must be absolutely transparent, as you know. Should we move to votes, if you could make sure that you raise your hand and then lower it again between the votes so that we can make sure that we count everything as appropriate. So Amy, can I ask you to report apologies and substitutions, please?
Sure. So we have apologies from Jo James. We have Nick Fenton attending as her substitute. Apologies from Carol Ford, and we have Roland Cooper here as substitute. We have David O'Connell attending as a representative for OSE. We have apologies from Councillor Cockshaw, and we have Councillor Deborah Arnold here as a substitute. And we have apologies from Councillor Bentley, and we have Councillor Wagland here as a substitute.
Thank you. Councillor Wagland, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I just wanted to mention, and I know that Stephanie Mitchener is on the call, that Essex County Council is now playing a role in relation to Thurrock, which is completely independent of the role which Essex is playing on this in relation to this body. I have not declared that formally as an interest, but I declare it for the purpose of this meeting, and will take advice as to whether I need to put it into the declaration of interests. But I am here in my capacity as the Essex County Council substitute, as you rightly indicated, and hopefully that's as clear as needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wagland. David Rayner.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, just to say you were probably going to come on to it, but to welcome Lara Fox as the new Director Representative from Success Essex Board.
Thank you. Yes, I was about to come on to that, so thank you very much. And welcome to all of those people who are substituting today. So also welcome to Councillor George, who is also a new board member. So thank you, Lara and Councillor George, for coming. That's great to welcome you onto the board. So in terms of item 2, minutes from the last board meeting on June, do I have, is everybody happy as a true record, or does anybody have any queries or comments? Everybody happy? Great, thank you. Councillor Wagland, you also just mentioned declarations of interest. Thank you. Can I ask whether there are any declarations of interest for the purposes of this board meeting? The only thing I should say is that it's a non-pecuniary interest, but I am co-chair of the South East Creative Economy Network, which is mentioned in the Sector Support Fund report later on. So I'd just like to record that. And if I could just remind people to please keep their register of interests up to date. Really important that we are absolutely transparent on all of those things. In terms of kind of other matters arising, I'd like to just thank everybody who came to the SELEP conference and AGM. I think there were some really interesting discussions that went on about the kind of economic situation that we're all facing at the moment, and some discussion about what the future might like. So that was really interesting, and thank you all for your contributions, and the AGM too. So now I'm going to hand over to Adams, who's going to complete on matters arising.
Thank you, Chair. So I just had 3 quick but really important matters arising. So the first one around Freeport East. So the Articles of Association have now been agreed by the Freeport East Board, which from a SELEP perspective is a continuation of existing arrangements, in that the LEP representative on the board is the joint LEP representative is the Chief Executive of the New Anglia LEP, with me providing the alternate arrangement to that. We will need the SELEP board to agree the articles as appropriate, and the intention is to send this via electronic procedure prior to the next Freeport East board on the 7th of December, and obviously prior to the next board of ours as well. So I'd be grateful when we send that through if members could respond accordingly. That'd be really helpful indeed. The second thing to mention is, of course, the deep dive, which has been undertaken on some capital projects delivered in East Sussex. That remains unchanged. We obviously, as a SELEP, are committed with the accountable body to informing the board when the Cities and Local Growth Unit report on any relevant findings. Ourselves, the accountable body, East Sussex County Council, are working very diligently with the CLGU to make sure that that's progressing, and of course you can expect that we'll bring you up to speed with those findings as they come. And the last one I was going to mention, probably the most important of all, is to remind the board, and we'll undertake work on this over the course of the coming weeks as well, that there is a requirement under the auspices of the original LEP review for us to have a 50-50 gender split on the board by 2023, which obviously is coming upon us really quickly. We remain absolutely committed to this. You know, it's really important from our perspective that we, if we can, exceed this target, but the whole area of work, I think, is critical to organisations of our nature. So as a practical step, we'll be working with federated area lead officers over the coming weeks and having those conversations to make sure that the membership of the board is fit for purpose. We'll have a broader conversation around it in December as well, and obviously keep officials in government appraised of where we are, and would very much hope that, you know, we can move quickly to be fully compliant with that LEP review and do absolutely what we need to do on what's a really important agenda.
Thank you, Adam. I absolutely echo those sentiments. It's really imperative that we look at not just gender representation, in my view, but across the board. But we, you know, we have a government diktat to ensure that we do represent gender in the best way possible, in the most equal way possible, and I think we will be better for it as a board. So, so thank you. Okay, if everybody is okay, I would like to suggest that we move an item forward, because it's an item we need to take a vote on. So I'm going to ask that we move item 10 forward, the statement of accounts. I don't want to lose quorum on this item if people have to leave early. David, I was thinking of you particularly. So if I can ask Lorna to take us through the statement of accounts, please.
Thank you, Chair, for that, and thank you for moving the item forward. Much appreciated. I will just have a few slides to support the presentation today. I'll share my screen. Hopefully that's come up for the board. Okay, so thank you. So this item on the accounts, it brings the statement of accounts for SELEP for the financial year 21-22 for consideration by the board. And in addition, for the second time, we're also bringing the company accounts for South East SELEP Limited for approval. Firstly, I'll just very briefly explain why we've got two sets of accounts. When the company was formed in March 2020, it was agreed by the board that none of the financial transactions or assets in relation to SELEP would be operated through the company, as the pre-existing position of financial management by the accountable body, overseen by the accountability board, will continue as the most appropriate arrangement. It's a requirement, however, for accounts to be prepared for the company, even though it isn't trading. As a consequence, two sets of accounts have been prepared for review by the board. The SELEP statement of accounts that reflect the financial position managed by the accountable body on behalf of SELEP, and the statement of accounts for the company South East SELEP Limited, confirming there's been no expenditure or income or assets held with respect to the company. Both these sets of accounts are appended to the board paper, so hopefully people have had opportunity to review them. It's a requirement that we submit the agreed accounts for the company to Companies House. And to be aware, as there's been no financial transactions made by the company and no assets are held, the company is considered dormant, which means that the accounts for South East SELEP Limited are not required to be audited. The SELEP statement of accounts, however, have been subject to external audit to ensure that they reflect the financial position managed by the accountable body on behalf of SELEP. The outcome of the audit was to confirm that the financial statements are prepared in all material respects in accordance with the financial reporting provisions of the Local Authority Code of Practice, and that there's nothing material to report to the board from the auditors with respect to any inaccuracies or misstatements identified within the accounts. In recognition that some members of the board are not familiar with the local authority account format, some summary tables have been included in the paper to demonstrate the underlying cash movements in reserves, the application of grant funding, and a simplified balance sheet position. I'll just summarise some key points in this respect just now. So this table sets out the overall increase in operational reserves of 330,000 following the repurposing of GPF funds during the year to support expenditure into 22-23. This was after funding the net operational expenditure of 687,000. And whilst this position represents a better than budgeted position, it masks the difficult choices that had to be made last year to reduce spending in year due to the uncertainty of the funding position from government for the majority of the year. This table sets out a summary of the overall funding movements within the year, the key position being with respect to the grants. It sets out that at the outset of the year, we had £33 million of grants, majority of which are capital grants. We received a further 49.6 million of grants in year. Majority of that was the 42.5 million of Getting Building Fund. And by the end of the year, we'd applied nearly 70 million of that grants, passing most of that out to the respective local authorities to enable them to deliver the agreed capital programmes and the revenue programmes associated with that funding. This left 13.3 million held by the accountable body in grant spend at the end of the year. And then in addition to that, during the year, we also considered our reserves position to ensure that we've got sufficient and appropriate funding to support the organisation moving forward. So during 21-22, given the ongoing uncertainties with funding, we created 3 new reserves, earmark reserves, in addition to the COVID-19 earmark reserves that we already had in place to support those recovery programmes. These new reserves were agreed to manage the future service commitments, potential redundancy payments, and other known risks set out in the SELEP position. So this overall position is summarised in this simplified balance sheet, reflecting the total net balance of usable reserves at March 22 of 4.7 million. So this simplified balance sheet has been produced by removing the non-cash accounting adjustments that have been applied to the balance sheet that sit within the accounts that I showed up earlier, that relate to accruals for holiday pay and the impact of the GPF loans, where we apply those loans at below standard interest rates. So the impact of those adjustments effectively show a reduced level of debtors and increase in our creditors in terms of the overall cash position for the authority. Just looking very briefly at the position moving forward and the overall reserves position. So this table sets out the forecast that we presented to the Accountability Board in September, which shows that by March 23, we expect to have around 778,000 in our operational reserve, which is the reserve that we used to fund the operating costs of SELEP in relation to the Secretariat, the accountable body, and the other contractual commitments that we have in place. This position doesn't yet reflect any other decisions that may happen in respect to the Sector Support Fund, which the board are being asked to endorse today, but effectively shows that the overall position for the for SELEP, as we've previously advised the board, is a continuing reduction in the amount of funding that's available. And as at today, there remains no assurance of any future funding allocations to SELEP beyond the current financial year. So we'll be planning for next year's budget based on the level of operational reserves and known funding levels that we have. We'll be taking that position to the Accountability Board in November. I'll pause there, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lorna. If you could stop sharing the screen so I can see everybody, that would be great. Thank you. Do we have any queries? I can't see people at the moment. Are there any questions or comments or queries? No. In that case, I would like you to confirm that you have considered the SELEP Statement of Accounts 21-22 in Appendix B. And I would ask whether you approve the Southeast SELEP Statement Limited Statement of Accounts 21-22 Appendix C. Can I have asked for your approval, please? Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lorna. That's great. So let's now go on to item 3, which is the creation of GBF prioritised project pipeline. Helen, I'm going to hand over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you. So as the board were advised in June, there is Getting Building Fund funding currently available for reallocation due to the removal of projects from the programme. The board had previously been advised of the removal of the Riding Sunbeam Solar Railways project. Subsequently, a second project, Langdon Place, has also been removed from the GBF programme. This brings the total GBF funding currently available for reallocation to 3.3175 million. As the board will recall, the agreed process for reallocation of funding allowed applications from existing GBF projects which have experienced cost increases due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Brexit, or current high inflation levels, and applications from existing projects which are seeking to deliver extensions to the original business case. A key objective of the agreed process is to ensure full spend of the GBF funding by the 31st of March 2023, in accordance with current government expectations. Failure to meet this expectation would represent a significant reputational risk for both SELEP and the upper tier local authorities responsible for delivery of the project. So this report seeks to summarise the applications for additional funding received, to detail the process used to determine the prioritisation of the projects, and sets out a proposed project pipeline for board consideration. All applications have been considered by the relevant federated board, and the local prioritisation has been taken into account when developing the pipeline. As detailed in the report, the projects have been divided into 4 bands, bands 1, 2A, 3, 4. Those projects currently shown in band 4 either do not meet the agreed criteria for award of additional GBF funding, or compliance with the SELEP assurance framework cannot be confirmed at this time. These projects cannot be considered for prioritisation by the board at this meeting and cannot be included in the pipeline until the identified issues have been satisfactorily addressed. Each project has been assessed against a number of criteria, and a RAG rating has been applied in each case. These criteria include the percentage of the original GBF funding allocation that has been spent to date, the strength of the case for additional GBF funding, the impact on project benefits, estimated value for money, remaining risks, and barriers to delivery. These RAG ratings have been used as the initial basis for prioritisation of the project. Where required, projects seeking additional GBF funding to support delivery of approved business cases have been further prioritised based on the percentage of original GBF funding allocation committed to date, the date of full spend of the additional GBF investment sought, and the percentage of the original GBF allocation spent to date. As detailed in the report, slightly different criteria has been applied to support the prioritisation of projects which submitted a new business case seeking GBF investment to take forward further phases of the original project. Table 2 within the report details the identified project risks and sets out the rationale for the current prioritisation of each project. This information has been used to compile the proposed project pipeline set out in Table 1. There is one point of correction in relation to the proposed pipeline. The extension of full fibre broadband rollout in Essex to reach rural and hard-to-reach premises is currently reported to have spent 15% of the existing GBF allocation. This is incorrect. No GBF funding has been issued to date by Essex County Council, but claims have been submitted for 19% of the GBF allocation. Full spend of the GBF funding at the end of the programme is in line with the payment schedule originally presented for the project and is due to the charging mechanism being applied. Since the report was prepared, I have been provided with updates on 2 projects within the pipeline. The first project is the Javelin Way development. The report identifies a risk in relation to the completion of outstanding utilities connections. I've been advised these connections have now been completed, and therefore reliance on utility companies to complete these connections no longer presents a risk to project delivery. The second project is the Jaywick Market and Commercial Space project. The report identifies an ongoing risk of discovery of further contamination and ground obstructions in the area surrounding the main building, which created uncertainty with regard to the total project cost. I have now been advised that further work has been undertaken and less contamination has been found than was first feared. In addition, a more cost-effective and environmentally friendly method of disposal has been used. This means it will be possible for all the groundwork to be completed. The risk of non-delivery or further unforeseen increases in project costs has been mitigated. In addition, I just wanted to reiterate that the GBF spend to date shown in the report reflects the actual spend figures provided in advance of the September 2022 Accountability Board meeting. Clearly, as these are live projects, GBF spend on these projects has continued over the last couple of months. Therefore, increased spend is expected to be reported at the November Accountability Board meeting. I also just wanted to quickly note that Table 3 sets out conditions which it is proposed should be attached to the prioritisation of some of the projects which are seeking additional GBF investment. In addition to agreeing the pipeline, the board asked to agree GBF spend beyond the 31st of March 2022, which is the official end of the Kitchen Building Fund programme, as required for those projects prioritised for receipt of additional GBF funding. A number of extensions to the 31st of March 2023, which have already been agreed by the Accountability Board, are set out in a capital programme update report, which will be presented later at this meeting. The projects set out in Table 4 in the report have not previously been granted an extension until March 2023, and therefore a decision is required at this meeting so that the process can commence immediately after the November Accountability Board meeting. I think that's all I'm going to say at this stage, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and Amy can share the pipeline as that own report on her screen if that would help the discussion.
Thank you, Helen. Right, so we're going to go on to discussion now. I can see a hand up already. So Graham, would you like to say something?
Yes, just another little, if I may, update, and with that goes a plea. So the Seven Sisters Country Park, which is only just under the red line, has now spent 100% as opposed to the 27% that's shown. And the red is about a planning consent, which will be determined, as it so happens, by the applicant effectively, before the end of October, and therefore in plenty of time for the Strategic National Board. The ask there was a mere £84,000, and I understand there's a surplus of £64,000. The project could be carried out for £64,000 with all those outputs. I'd be very grateful if colleagues would consider, bearing in mind this is East Sussex's money that we're getting back here. Well, it wasn't our money, we just couldn't spend it in time. If that could slide above the red line. I think that probably works. Obviously, it would have to be confirmed by Helen that that would be acceptable from her point of view, but just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. David Rayner.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to say that the Success Essex Board agrees with this list of priorities. In looking at the 5 projects that were put to us, we prioritise them in order of, amongst other things, but most importantly, supporting projects that had been very badly affected by rising costs through Brexit, COVID, whatever, as long as they could genuinely prove that those were the causes for those increased costs, rather than projects that had finished and were looking now for additionality. Hence the prioritisation that we made within our own projects. But as I say, we support this proposal and hope that it gets approved by the Strategic Board.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Amy, for sharing the list. So we have in front of us the list that was presented in our papers. I believe that's right.
I have just tweaked the figure that Graham mentioned, just to flag that up here.
Okay, right. But that doesn't show the current that doesn't mark some of the updates, that the verbal updates that Helen has just given us. Councillor Wagland, you're on mute.
Forgive me, thank you. I just want to be clear that JWIC is now treated as green in accordance with the ordinary rules applicable, since the objection that was applicable to it doesn't now apply in light of the report that we've heard from Helen.
Helen, do you have any comments on that?
Yes, that risk has been mitigated. Obviously, if the amber is changed to green and the project moves up the pipeline, then another project will drop out of the funded section. So I think that's for the board to consider whether they want to make that change, and if they do, which project.
Yes, I fully understand that, and that I would like to speak to that, if I may, Chair, at the appropriate moment. But the impact, I think, falls on projects that I would be speaking to in relation to Essex in this matter, and therefore it probably helps to look at those in the round.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments? David?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not quite sure what Councillor Wagland's going to say, but the Success Essex Board strongly says that the prioritisation is the order that we have put forward, so that it's the broadband rollout and the Tyndall Square, and that JWIC should remain below the cut-off line at present. And we wouldn't want to see that changed.
I entirely follow that, Chair, if I may say so. That isn't the position of Essex County Council, and I probably should mention that we were not present at the relevant meeting, so I would of course have said that at that meeting at the time, David. So my apologies for that. You may recall that occurred at the time of the Queen morning, and I think some confusion arose over whether that meeting was actually going ahead or not from our end, probably, but forgive me. As far as Essex County Council is concerned, JWIC is a project which now is able to go ahead. This board has yet to have funded any project in what is the most deprived ward in relation to our county. That I think is unfortunate. And we have one here which we would be able to fund. From the point of view of how we do the exercise, it has worked strenuously to be able to get itself into Band 1, and it would qualify as Band 1 now, which was not, of course, information available to Success Essex at the relevant time. And we are strongly of the view that JWIC is the project which should be treated as a priority in relation to where we stand on funding. As I say, all of the various elements of this have been now resolved. That resolves the uncertainty, and I would emphasise that the BCR, as your papers note, is very high. The assessment of this particular project is that it creates business activity in, as I say, one of England's most deprived places. We're talking about somewhere where life expectancy is currently 20 years less than, say, in Uttlesford. It seems to me that this is a project which absolutely cries out to be so exercised, and I would urge the board to consider it in that context, bearing in mind that it has dealt with the particular difficulties. Very happy to deal with the order of the remaining projects, but it is Essex firm view that the elements of broadband, particularly in the current situation in which we find ourselves, are significantly important and are offering the largest, widest spread opportunities that we could afford. One of the broadband projects that we have is the overall rural broadband. If that doesn't go ahead, then there are people who will never see super fast broadband. It is a project that we've been working on strenuously for some time, and I think it qualifies under band 1 in any event. But its only problems, as is well known to many on this board, have related to a hold-up caused entirely by the regulator of 12 months and nothing to do with regulatory matters. So that, as I've said, that project is one which we consider in priority terms should be the next looked at on the agenda. The third element of this would be the SELEP project, which we would wish to see occur because of the spread that it would afford, but that one has a value for money element which would need to be considered. The Tyndall Square project will need a value for money assessment as a result of the fact that it was originally put forward at under the £1 million threshold, and as a result this would take it over that figure, and against that background we would need to know when that ITE assessment would be made. So those would be our views on the prioritisation in relation to this from the Essex side of matters.
Thank you. Helen, I think you've got your hand up, so I didn't know whether it was on a matter of what Councillor Waggins just said. So
yes, it was just a quick clarification around Tyndall Square. So they applied the value for money exemption, which can be applied up to an ask of £2 million. So the only requirement from the IT is just to confirm that the project still meets the requirements of the value for money exemption. So that can be completed very quickly after this meeting if the project is prioritised.
Okay, thank you. I have in order Councillor Arnold and then David Rayner, please.
Thank you. Sorry, it coming in late as a substitute. I haven't actually seen the full pack, so the answers to my question might have been there, but I'm sorry I haven't seen it. Under the 2As, the extension of existing phase 2 ASLA LFNN, there's a red line. I just wondered what the red line signified. Unfortunately, in Helen's presentation, the sound wasn't too clear on my end, so she may have answered that, but I haven't heard it, sorry.
So just for clarification, the red line is the cut-off point. So that indicates the amount of projects we could currently fund, and the projects underneath them would become the pipeline should other money be returned, but they wouldn't at this stage get funded through the amount of money that we've just had returned.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Just checking with officers that I am completely correct in that, but I hope I am. David Rayner.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really just coming back on what Councillor Wagman said. Yes, the local authority representatives weren't at the Success Essex Board meeting. They were fully aware of it. They could have joined it, and they were recommended by the Secretariat, which is part of Essex County Council, to join it because it wasn't a public meeting. I'm really, really disappointed that this has come through to me late yesterday. If things were on pause because of mourning for the Queen, as far as I'm aware, she was buried some time ago. And to raise it now at the very last minute is, in my mind, wholly unacceptable. The position remains from Essex, from the Success Essex Board, that these priorities should not be changed, and we will not be voting to change them, that it should remain as broadband and Tyndall Square. Tyndall Square is a transformative project which has actually delivered and continues to deliver, and is exactly the sort of thing that SELEP should be supporting. And it needs a relatively small amount to see it over the line, and it can be got over the line. The broadband, and actually the Success Essex Board put it as its #1 priority. We're happy to go with the reordered priority that SELEP has produced, following its interrogation of the various projects from all 4 federated boards. Obviously the SELEP one isn't one that SEB considered because it's in the OSC area, but we do not agree that JWIC should be moved up the priority list.
Thank you, David. In terms of, sorry, Councillor Wagland, do you want to just come back?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think the consequences of this arise because of JWIC resolving a problem which may have been anticipated not to be resolvable. I did say at the previous meeting, Chair, which you may remember, that I thought that different types of asbestos from experience create different consequences. I was not convinced that this was one of the kind that was going to be severely problematic. As a result of that, that project goes up into band 1, and with it consequences follow. Chair, it seems to me that we should at the least be given an officer recommendation in light of all of those matters, and it may be that that should come to a future meeting. On the subject of JWIC and Tyndall Square, from Essex's perspective, that the JWIC project is transformational. I can't think of anything which is as transformational within our deprived wards as this, and it is of concern, I think, that it should be seen as something which should be regarded as not taking a priority in our deliberations. It and our rural broadband exercise would, as I read the table, come into the category under which they would be part of the funded programme. And officers can no doubt confirm that for me or otherwise, and if not, then we probably do need to have a further conversation. When it comes into that further programme, then there are consequences, as I understand it, for the remaining schemes, and in relation to those, then it seems to me that there is a position in relation to the SELEP programme and in relation to the Tyndall Square project. So far as those two are concerned, I'm grateful for the further reassurances, and it seems to me that perhaps one possibility might be to look at spreading the possibility of funding to those particular projects. But the Tyndall Square project was advised to us at Essex as fully funded. It is virtually nearing completion, as I understand it. I'm there most days of the week. What we are talking about here is an extraordinary project for the JWIC residents, which will be transformational. And I would urge members to consider that in the context of the overall objectives of SELEP.
Thank you, Councillor Wagland. Adam, Helen, in terms of kind of process, I'm not sure we've had a situation before, but I'm relatively new at this, where the local authority and the federated board don't agree. So what is, from a governance process, are there any particular things that you would like to point out?
I think from our perspective, our assurance framework is very clear that the advice of the federated board is what we take in terms of determining priorities. But obviously that's not to denigrate the conversation that we've just had and the updates that we've received on the projects as just discussed. I mean, to my mind, the important things here are making sure that the money is spent, and that we can ensure these projects are delivered. That's the important thing. A way of looking at this could be that, taking the list that we just displayed that was in the report, that those projects above the red line outside of Success Essex are approved for funding today, and that there is an urgent separate discussion for the Success Essex area to determine how the remaining slots are taken. Because it would be a difficult position to sort of take forward, given where we are, given that there is at the moment a disagreement on the level of priority for the projects coming from that federated area. And I wouldn't want to sort of take us down a route where we took a divisive decision. That said, I'd be also really keen to make sure that we pressed ahead where we could press ahead. So, for me, and I would defer to colleagues from the accountable body, given what we've just heard, just to be clear, I'd be keen to agree the projects above the red line in the report that in other areas where there's no dispute, so we could crack on, and invite colleagues from Essex to come together in a meeting to determine precisely what should happen in Essex.
That sounds like an eminently sensible suggestion to me. So I have David's hand up and then Councillor Wagland.
Well, as I said, I'm really disappointed at the procedure here because we've been ambushed today with this proposal, had no knowledge of it coming forward before, despite what Councillor Wagner may or may not now say. We had no knowledge that this was going to happen, and I think it's actually appalling. We went through the due process. This is the priority list that we put forward. If Essex County Council want to change JWIC for the broadband rollout, then fine, but we mustn't see Tyndall Square dropping out of this list.
Thank you, David. Councillor Wagland.
Chair, I'm sorry, but no, we are very clear as to our strategy in relation to these matters at Essex. It has long been our strategy. The position in relation to success at Essex is missing.
Well, if it's long been your position, Leslie, why has it only come out today? You didn't come to the meeting, which was over a month ago. The Queen was being buried. You could have raised this before now.
This is nothing to do with the Queen being buried, David. This is the point I made in relation to that was the reason for the confusion in relation to the meeting. Could I please, Chair, just finish? Because I don't think I should be interrogated in quite that way from the panel, but it's for you to decide the safe space that we operate in. Yeah. As you and I have had this conversation before, the position in relation to this is the very simple one that JWIC has met the requirements which take it into band 1. And if anyone is going to tell me that that isn't the case, then that is a very different proposition. The broadband rural has always been within band 1, as I understand it. And those two projects, I agree with Adam, should be dealt with now on that footing. So they would now be above the line. The question of what happens thereafter should be a matter for the debate of the board and a decision about prioritisation. And I agree that that has come at the last minute, but the completion of the information concerned that satisfied officers has been in the course of the last week. So if you will forgive me, I would endorse the point that Adam made, but on the basis that it would include those which are above the red line in by reference to where they currently stand on today's status. We all know the difficulties of things where everything is in a very fast moving world, and it's important that we as a publicly accountable board who are being recorded, being seen in our work, actually deal with that on the basis of what the position is as at today's date.
Thank you, Councillor Wagland. I'm very keen that we don't sort of continue a very ongoing debate.
No, I agree, Sarah. I just wholly disagree with what Councillor Wagland's saying. This went through the due process. The projects were put forward by the business board, as Adam has said, how they should have been prioritised. And that is the priority that they should have. If we're going to remove the Essex projects and have a separate vote within a discussion within Essex, which will obviously need to involve both OSC and SEB, then so be it. But that's going to delay everything. But we certainly cannot be approving today moving JWIC up.
Chair, and Adam, could I please have your advice on the basis that to the board on the basis that the JWIC project now qualifies for band 1. The question of prioritisation by OSC seems to me to be a matter of what happens when there is a question mark beyond that, and that seems to me to relate to the other projects, but not to the two which we have got over the line, as it were, to use a rather more vernacular way of expressing it. So I think that is where the difference between us lies, and it seems to me that for that it is very clear that we have two really good, exceptional projects in my submission, which can go over the line. They are over the line on the merits of the matter. Thereafter, the question of how we prioritise seems to me to be entirely a different one, and one which ought to be the subject of further discussion, perhaps with David and myself and or the leader at Essex.
Adam, Helen, can I have your guidance on this, please?
My perspective is just to reiterate that the most important thing is pushing ahead and supporting projects and cracking on getting the money spent. I think the projects that we had in the report above the red line that are positioned to move ahead outside of the Success Essex area, we should move ahead with, and I think we need to and approve. But I think, given the conversation that we've just heard, there needs to be an additional conversation across Just Essex partners to determine which projects from Essex should fall above the red line. So my recommendation would be to push ahead where we can with the projects in the other areas.
Yeah, there is no doubt in my mind that the point of this money is to get building, get going, and we have very clear criteria from the government to spend this money quickly and efficiently, and we cannot delay on things too much. I have a series of people with their hands up, so I'm going to go in order. So Graham, Peters, Perry, Vince, and Councillor Gough, and then Clive, please. Thank you. Graham.
Just very quickly, absolute support for Adam's proposal, as he has just stated. That seems to me to be a sensible way forward. I feel very sorry that Essex have an internal issue, but they must sort it out themselves. And that shouldn't in any way delay anything else that's going on.
Thank you, Graham. Perry.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also feel it's very important that when we do vote, let's just go through the projects that we're actually voting on, so that we have absolute clarity what we're voting on here.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you. Vince. You're on mute.
Apologies. My point was to understand what's meant by clause 424, which is suggesting there are some projects that won't meet their totals, and then there'll be further decisions to be made by the accountability board. I think it might be helpful at this moment, the point you're discussing and all others, to understand where those underspends are likely to be and what projects they are, and what process we can use ahead of the accountability board. Reason for that is, notwithstanding the discussions we just had, if work is going to get done by March in most of these projects, November's almost too late to get it done, unless it's a special case. So I think it'd be really useful just to understand if there is going to be headroom as a consequence of that paragraph 424.
Thank you. Helen, please.
Sorry, I'm just checking what 424 says. So I think this is referring to two projects in the pipeline, which at the time we couldn't confirm the total project cost. I think one of them was Jaywick. I can't remember off the top of my head what the other one was. There is obviously a number of other ongoing GDF projects which continue to be monitored. And there are some that are still considered to be high risk. So there is a possibility of further funding coming back at a later date. But at this stage, I can't confirm that because there's further work that needs to be done to understand the status of those projects.
But I think the board needs to know what those projects are. I mean, the paper mentions that there's two projects. I think we ought to know what they are, because we're taking decisions, and big decisions being talked about in Essex on projects which may not deliver, but we don't quite know which ones they are, and maybe it follows it up. I don't know, but I think it would affect any vote in this area.
Thank you. What I suggest we do is Helen, give you a moment to check that, and I'll just carry on with some of the questions in order to expedite, unless you've got the answer immediately.
So I think the two projects referred to in 4.24 are Thanet Parkway and Jaywick Market and Commercial Space. The issue with Thanet Parkway is there is signalling and level crossing work which needs to be completed, which has not yet currently at detailed design, so there remains an element of uncertainty. But those works do need to be delivered to enable the station to open. And as we've mentioned, the JWIC project has moved on since the paper was written, and further works have been done to establish if there's further asbestos and ground obstructions. In terms of other projects in the programme which aren't included in this report, there are a couple of projects covered in the capital programme update report where there is a risk because one of the delivery partners is Swan Housing, which has some issues going on at the moment. So there is the potential that further funding may become available at a later date if the projects involving Swan Housing cannot progress as planned.
Does that answer your question, Vince? Yeah, good, thank you. Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Sarah. I think firstly, to go back to what we were saying a moment ago, I too very much support what Adam described. I think we need to get on with as many projects as we possibly can. And we have some very good ones here above the line, which have been described. And I think we just need to crack on with those. My question, and it doesn't, and frankly, the answer to this doesn't, whichever way it goes, invalidate what I've just said, is if we have the bit of process that involves a conversation within Essex on their schemes, how, and a decision is reached on that, how quickly can that side of things then move ahead? Because clearly we've got our next accountability board coming forward, and the mechanism, as I'd understand it, would normally be we would agree here today what we wish to accomplish, and the accountability board would then take that up and give the full and formal agreement to it. Given also the timelines we're talking about, can the process of resolution outside the meeting then feed directly into the next accountability board?
Very good point, Adam.
To my mind, we can run an electronic procedure if we need to.
Yeah, I mean, I would urge that we do there is something along those lines, because we're so tight on time.
Absolutely.
That, yeah. Sorry, I've made my point. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Clive.
Yeah, I support Alan totally. I think that I'm not qualified to make any decisions on Essex's situation. I'm only qualified to make decisions on the document that was presented to us, and we've had time to research, and therefore wouldn't feel comfortable making any decisions away from that, and therefore support Adam and Graham and everyone else that supported them.
Thank you, Clive. David.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I agree with what Adam said. I would repeat something he did say, which was that this process was for the projects to be assessed by the federated boards and then put forward to SELEP, which is what happened within Essex. It is not a decision for Essex County Council.
Well, I think what we're doing is we're suggesting that maybe the board, that the OSE and
no, I agree.
Yeah, come back and talk together about this. Thank you.
I agree, and that's what we're going to have to do, isn't it? But it's a great shame because these projects are now going to get delayed because of this last-minute ambush.
I think the importance is that we are able to progress matters as quickly as possible and ensure we will make sure from the SELEP point of view that we are able to undertake an electronic vote ASAP if this is what the board agree on the Essex projects. Councillor Glazier and then Councillor Wagland, and then I think we need to draw it to a vote.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, I think that what Adam has said is exactly right, but I would just like to say that if we in Team East Sussex had a position where East Sussex County Council and the rest of the board had not had that input, I think that and for whatever reason, I'm not judging why Essex weren't at that table. I think the opportunity for them to have that conversation would be asked for. So I think Adam's solution is a good one. But you know, to suggest that that the Essex situation was all agreed as it obviously was, but without the county council there, I think that the businesses and the point of in our case Team East Sussex would be missed. I'll just leave that.
Thank you, Councillor Gazer. Councillor Baggins.
Yes, since we have a number of really good projects here, two of which we now know have met the criteria on their merits and were originally put forward to this board as in the process as indicated, this is a matter of priority over the money that has become available, not a matter of where projects were referred to. But against that background, it does seem to me it would be useful, Chair, to have the ITE element in order, and is there a chance, Adam, of that being available so that that point can be addressed?
But in terms of
the projects, the Tyndall Square in particular, possibly the Azalea one as well, just to have that information available for the board.
What, at this meeting?
How just to know when we can expect those.
go on, Helen.
Okay. So the Tyndall Square, just to check around the compliance with the value for money exemption. I can ask Steer to look at that as soon as possible, and they've assured me it won't take very long.
Thank you.
The second review of the LFFN business case has been completed by Steer early this week. There are a couple of outstanding queries which we need to pick up on a call with Borough, myself and Steer, but we can try and pick them up as soon as possible.
Yeah, really appreciate that. That's the usual fantastic efficiency I'd expect from you, Helen. So thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated. And yes, absolutely in agreement with Adam's approach to taking this forward now. You will all know that I don't agree the characterisation that David's put onto the situation, but I don't need to take that up here. We can take that offline.
Thank you. Councillor Arnold. Oh. Do you have your Councillor Arnold? I think, are you there? I think we're having some connection issues. Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, the screen. Can you hear me? Sorry, can you hear me?
Only, not really, no. Well,
I can't hear anything. It is very important that you hear this, that the agreements that you're saying weren't in place for the LFN Azalea one, they are actually in place now. We have an extra process to go through with the Commissioner and the S151 officer, but the LGF signature that was delayed was done this morning, and the other two were done yesterday. So it is all agreed and signed off. There's no delay now on our behalf. But sorry, I couldn't hear what Leslie or Helen said because the screen and the sound was so spasmodic. Hopefully you've heard me.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for that clarification. All right. I am moved. I think we should now go to have a kind of vote on the fact on the Adams proposal. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Sarah, I do just want to clarify what is now being said is that we're going to approve all of the projects in this list apart from those that have been put forward from Success Essex, and that there will be a further Success Essex board meeting at which we will then reconsider all of the projects, taking account of this new evidence that has been put forward in respect of JWIC. If people choose not to attend that meeting, then that will be their bad luck, but Success Essex Board will come to a decision and will put forward their prioritised projects, which, as long as they're broadband, Tyndall Square and or JWIC, will be approved by this board and therefore receive funding, as what I'm understanding we've just said.
So what we would do is then go to, if I'm correct, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, is we would go to electronic vote once you put forward your proposals from OSE, and then we would go out to electronic. No?
Just to be really clear.
Okay.
So my proposal is this, that number one, the board agrees the pipeline. It's important, given that there is always the possibility of further funding becoming free from other projects. You know, we don't know if it will, but it might do. It's really important that we agree the pipeline today, as previously displayed and as in the report, number one, outside, and that the projects above the red line in the pipeline outside of the Success Essex area, let's just be clear on that, outside of the Success Essex area, are supported to move forward, and that the Success Essex have another meeting as quickly as they can to recommend to us which of that balance above the red line that's been vacated, if you like, by Success Essex projects, which projects they would want to support and how they would want to do that. I think that's the only way. So it's those two stages: agree the pipeline, agree to support the projects above the red line outside of the Success Essex ones today, and secondly, the Success Essex colleagues convene an urgent additional meeting to once and for all agree priority inclusive of everybody. So in the first instance, via electronic procedure, we can then determine how the vacated funding above the red line is spent in Success Essex, and then
that's what I meant, is that there has to be a process by which the board then says we agree with the proposals from OSE.
No.
From Success Essex. Sorry.
Don't get. We must be clear. We're talking about Success Essex projects. In the report, the LFFN project is above the red line. We've had the assurances that we need. So it's Success Essex projects.
Yeah, Success Essex.
Indeed,
so
and
that
I
would
agree
go
with
to...
what Adam has just said.
Okay. All right. Okay. And so is everybody happy with that proposal? Can I see your hands to confirm that you are happy with that? Thank you.
Can I just check that my accountable body colleagues are happy with that as well?
Answer came there, none.
Do you want a verbal confirmation?
Adam?
How are we doing on votes, Amy?
Yep, I see we've got 20 voting members and I see more than 11 votes, so that has passed.
Thank you.
So we've agreed, just for clarification, we have agreed the prioritized GBF pipeline and the associated conditions set out in table 3, apart from Success Essex ones, which will go then to an electronic procedure once the Success Essex board have put forward their recommendations. And that the other thing that I presume I need to go to check is that we agree the GBF spend beyond the 31st of March 2022 is applicable for projects listed in table 4 for those projects which have been prioritised for additional GBF funding. If the project completion dates are delayed by more than 6 months, the board will be asked to confirm its continued support for that project. Are we agreed on that one too? Let me see your hands. Okay. Thank you all very much. Adam, do we have confirmation that the accountable body is happy?
I have received that.
Great. Good.
So,
Councillor Glazier, sorry.
I guess that means that Seven Sisters is currently on hold. Graham Peters put forward a suggestion earlier that we had some money sufficient to do most of it, and that could have been allocated. With this, if you like, intervention, I guess that means that's on hold for now.
That's my understanding.
Correct.
Yes. I have, I don't know whether they're old hands. I'm just checking. Vince and Graham, your hands are up.
Sarah,
I'll jump in. I was just going to say, yes, Keith is right. I think in this new change circumstances, my plea disappears into confusion. But just please think about it again. It's a lovely project. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Graham. Vince.
Sarah, my point followed on from the point I made earlier. If there are projects that we're not certain of the funding levels, did the Accountability Board get a full report on the likely end GBF spending for all the projects? So that in November you've got that final position. So any reallocation of funds can take place at that Accountability Board to ensure they can get in the ground by March.
Thank you. Stephanie.
Thank you, Sarah. But apologies, I seem to have lost my connection at a critical time when Adam was asking for the view of the accountable body. But just to assure from that point that the accountable body was happy with the recommendations and amendments made on that last item.
Great. Well, thank you very much, board members. It's some challenging discussion, but really good to have it and really important to have everyone's engagement on everything. So thank you very much for that all. In terms of, let's move on now to item 4, which is planning for 23-24 and beyond. You know, despite what Lorna told us right at the beginning about some of the challenges on finance, and despite the really difficult processes that the government is currently in the position of, I think it's really important that as a organisation we continue to work in really close partnership to make the right changes happen for this area of the country. So Adam, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. I'll try and share my screen. Can you see that? Put it on slide view.
Not yet.
Okay. Is that now?
I can't.
Any second now it should come on, I think. Any joy?
No.
Oh, it's telling me it's on.
Well, do you want to, can you start speaking without it and then hope that Amy, oh no, now it's coming. Thank you.
Oh, no, I've scrapped it as well. All right, have you got it now? Is it still there?
No, I've just, yes, now we have it.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Well, I could actually do the lie down. I'm not sure about presenting this, but I'll give it a go anyway. So I was intending to talk for 20 minutes, but I'm absolutely determined that we hear from Brian on the housing body of work that we've produced over the last number of years. So I'll keep this as brief as I can. But what I really wanted to do in this presentation is just put across to the board the progress that we're making, the work we're delivering, and just how important it is for us to carry on doing exactly that over the course of the next year and maybe beyond that as well. So just to recap on the white paper, that's the first thing I was going to do. Going back to the beginning of the year, we know that the Levelling Up white paper positively acknowledged the role and the impact of LEPs, and that we received a letter subsequently on the 31st of March that gave us an indication as to what we should do to support the implementation of new devolution arrangements. So, and that's really all about ensuring that a strong business voice is felt in new local institutions, but also that we were able to continue our normal strategic work, so strategic economic planning, and also deliver those functions that we've been empowered to deliver over the course of the previous years, including the Growth Hub. So that was a message for us, certainly in the short term, to carry on, and then just to do what we can to inform the conversations with local partners around trying to implement the white paper. Just to bring it a little bit more up to date, so we do still await further guidance from government on their expectations for next year. So we were called upon in that letter on the 31st of March to 23-24 in late November, which would have necessitated an agreement today. We have put some words down already. I think we're pretty clear on what next year should look like, and I'll touch on some of it in a minute. But important to note that that deadline is likely to change. Government officials, even prior to this week, told us that they weren't yet clear on exactly what we could expect in terms of support and funding next year. And I would very much expect that some of those discussions have fallen down to the bottom of a very busy list over the course of the last few days as well. So we're not clear on, you know, the position of officials as it stands. To reiterate what I've said before, by and large, the existing funding and those balances that you heard Lorna talk about earlier will support the team's reduced operation until March 2024. So, you know, we will be here to do the important job that we've done recently, and we'll continue to develop until at least that point. That only really applies to the overall team as it stands with the Growth Hub. The funding for that only runs until March next year. So there are some ongoing conversations about how we manage that, which, you know, obviously from a personal perspective, I would reflect on as being really disappointing, because the Growth Hub is a really important link to business and a really effective way of with partners as well, supporting businesses and supporting the local economy. I just want to give you not something I do very often, just give you a bit of an inkling as to what's happening elsewhere in the network. So just overall, just to reflect that the LEP network have been actively seeking a 2-year settlement for LEPs, but those LEPs in areas that have not been prioritised for an early devolution transition. So we've already seen some LEPs elsewhere in the country have made decisions to close and to fold into emergent arrangements. Obviously that's not the case for us as yet, but certainly there's a sort of mixed bag of progress in different parts of the country. So whilst you've got some of those LEPs that are making that transition, there are others that would say that new mechanisms are years away, and there's no ambition locally for it in various places, and therefore they're in positions to plan for a longer term. And some of those LEPs have incomes from enterprise zones and interest payments on GPF loans and other things to sustain them. In fact, one LEP has over £4 million in revenue reserves, which, you know, is quite a nice position for them to be in, although you do have to ask yourself the question, you know, why are you sitting on £4 million that of public money that isn't being used? And then you have some LEPs, again, some LEPs that are quite close to us geographically, are pursuing consultancy style revenue raising activities to support their operation. And I suppose there's a question there about making sure that you operate within the kind of the original point of what LEPs are there to do, which is absolutely about the area that you're in and supporting economic growth, and not necessarily going down that route. That said, you know, when LEPs are organised as companies limited by guarantee, with all the money running through the company, and obviously everything to do with being a going concern being really important, then of course you're going to look at different ways of being able to generate funding and keep the organisation going. So it's a really mixed bag. It's a really interesting one to watch, and as things change and develop, I'll of course keep the board up to date on what's happening in other places. So when is change needed? I think we've seen in other places that some places have jumped to structure and have assumed straight away that institutional change has got to be the answer. Some places have taken the view that non-institutional change is probably more important, and some have gone from the starting point of what does the economy need, which I would suggest is a really sensible place. For me, you know, the continuance of what we're doing, certainly for the time being, is important. So as I've already said, the Growth Hub is important in respect of supporting business, as are other activities that we undertake. And we're starting to engage in those conversations that are happening in different places about implementing the white paper. And I'm really pleased that really recently, this week we've been able to bring our perspective to some of those really important dialogues that are happening across partners. But it's important to stress that ensuring that the voice of business is felt in new arrangements is priority number one. Government have been clear that that's what LEPs have brought, and that's what should continue to be the case, however those things are organised, and I think that's really the starting point for the interventions in those conversations that we would make as a LEP. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes just quickly talking about the things that we've done of late, and some of these things we don't necessarily give as much airtime to as we'd like. We of the last couple of years, we've spent an awful lot of time talking about governance arrangements and possibly less about what we've done. So in the area of, you'll recall when we discussed this, at the last board, I divided the activities of the LEP into 3 areas, and I'll just reflect on those now. So strategic planning and intelligence. I won't read through every word on this table. I'll share the slides subsequent to the meeting. But you can see that some of the stuff that we've produced lately has had a real impact on not only on our area and our work, but other things that people have produced, other reports, certainly when it comes to strategic planning, that have been put together elsewhere to push forward various sectors, and other funding bids and other bits of progress. They've all absolutely built on the data and the intelligence that we hold at SELEP. So I've mentioned the bid to the DCMS's Create Growth Fund that's been undertaken recently. That's a really good example of where we've been able to have a really good input into how that was developed. And then also, even with things like LSIPs, the local skills improvement plans that are led by chambers and in most places, and not by LEPs, we've been really busy in ensuring that the intelligence that we hold absolutely contributes to the development of those. On convening the business voice, the major projects group has been going from strength to strength. So we've got a supply chain community platform linked to the major projects group now. The big infrastructure projects involved in that conversation have agreed to explore common approaches to procurement, to skills and construction skills and decarbonisation, and are really enthusiastic about doing it on this sort of regional level, which is fantastic. The skills advisory panel has continued to do great things. The housing and development group, I won't steal Brian's thunder, but when you consider that we've exceeded a housing target set some time ago, there aren't many LEP areas that could claim that's been achieved in their patch, and that's a great credit to a lot of that work that's been undertaken there. Continue to work with the Lower Thames Crossing team, as you could expect as well. So they've published a skills and employment strategy, obviously really important to how that massive intervention is supported locally, and we've played an important role in informing that with the data and the intelligence that we've had. In terms of delivery, clearly finishing off the delivery of the capital programme is important, and we've continued to do that. The COVID-19 recovery funds have touched, thousands of businesses and individuals as well. The Growth Hub continues to produce really positive metrics too. And then there are things that have progressed elsewhere that behind the scenes we've spent time supporting. So the support that we've offered Freeport East around the development of the FBC there, through our own economic analysis and modelling, made a huge difference to to that document. We're really pleased to be involved in it and get it to where it needed to be. And similarly, with Thames Freeport, the skills strategy and plan has been heavily informed by us and the work that we've done in the background. So, you know, I don't think that the three tables that I've just mentioned necessarily touch on everything that we've done, but it just gives you a flavour of why I think that our continued work is important, irrespective of what happens over the course of the next year or two. You know, it's clear that behind the scenes where we continue to do absolutely loads to you know, focus our energies on the right thing. In terms of what comes next, we'll obviously put the delivery plan together over the course of the next couple of months and make sure that we meet the deadline that is set by or reset by government. But some of the things that we're starting to toy around with are what we do on coastal inward investment. So this was highlighted in when I spoke to the board a few months ago around doing a focused piece of work on our coastal areas in respect of inward investment, given the knowledge that we have on barriers and opportunities there. We're going to talk to business intermediary bodies and others about the understanding of the economy that we have and how, you know, and possibly position it put a report together, you know, really talking about the Southeast economy and where it is, a sort of state of the region report, if you will. And, you know, whilst that might sound like a sort of static piece of work, I think we are very clear on a week-to-week basis how much the intelligence that we've accumulated is useful. So actually making a statement, producing a narrative and having an up-to-date account of where the economy in our area is would be a really positive thing to do, and thinking about how we could keep that up to date, I think would be important as well. I won't talk about the whole of the rest of this slide, but I will mention the Growing Places Fund. We do have the best part of £9 million worth of Growing Places Fund paid back. It absolutely is our intention that we run another round of Growing Places Fund, which is, as most board members will be aware, is the loan fund that we have. You know, we've got no intention of just sitting on that. It needs, as I will say in every meeting that we have, you know, the funding needs to be used, projects need to be supported, and things need to happen. So, you know, we will be progressing with that. I haven't put a timescale on it, and we haven't done it yet, simply because of resource and the challenge that we have with the reduced team and infinite calls on our time. But it is there. It is something that we'll do, and, you know, you have my assurance that it will happen. So yeah, plenty to do, plenty that we are doing. Feels really positive. What I will do, of course, is keep the board up to date on a meeting by meeting basis on what we're doing as those conversations around devolution and next steps in implementing the white paper progress locally. Very much hope that we're part of those conversations, can inform them, and that, you know, where we get to over the course of the next year or two is a sensible place. So that's all I really wanted to say, Sarah. Conscious that there's a fair bit more of the agenda to get through.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. And, you know, absolutely great to hear about all the plans, and I'd like to pay tribute to you and all of the staff team for all of the work that you continue to do, and it's really important we don't lose that knowledge. So thank you, Perry.
Yeah, well done, Adam, and some good stuff there, and well done to you to keep the wheels keep turning on the bus as well in difficult circumstances. Can I just address one question though that probably is the elephant in the room, but a lot of businesses are starting to get their heads around this at the moment, which is, and I appreciate you talked about 23, 24, but the scenario is the what if the Labour government. All right. So how are you sort of working your strategy thoughts on engagement with Labour now going forward, as opposed to a Conservative government that, you know, if we had an election today would be an absolute given, so I'm told. But as I say, I'm working with quite a few businesses now, Adam, that are starting to get their heads around how does that affect them. And I'd be interested, not necessarily your answer today in full, because, you know, but really as part of our strategy going forward, I think it has to be a consideration, although of quite a few on the panel, I suspect will be sort of holding their hands up in the gasp, but I think we've got to build that in a sensible strategy going forward. What is their views on LEPs and how are they engaging with them?
Thanks, Perry.
My instant reaction to that, I mean, from our perspective, you know, the job that we undertake is sort of unfettered by politics, in the sense that we're there to deploy the resources that we have at our disposal in support of the local economy. But, you know, despite me saying that, clearly where the country goes in respect of its overall politics is important. And, you know, we've seen in the past that Labour government has been supportive of regional economic growth and kind of the measures that have supported that with RDAs and everything else. It is the case that the LEP network at a national level are starting to have those conversations, as you would expect they should. I do actually sit on the LEP network board at a national level as the representative LEP chief exec for the South, so I expect to see some of the results of those conversations coming through in those conversations fairly quickly, coming through to my own conversations with the board fairly quickly. And when that is the case, I'll of course reflect that back to the appropriate extent to the board, but very much a live conversation at that national level.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so as if by magic, let's move on to an area that there has been a lot of work going on, as Adam alluded to, which is the housing delivery. And so I'm going to hand over to Liz, who's going to intro this item. I know we are tight on time, so I want to hear all of this, but I also want to ensure that we also get to vote on the other matters arising that will be coming up in the agenda. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. I'll just be really quick. I'm the strategic housing advisor for the board and work very closely with Brian, focusing on positive messaging to do with growth. A lot of the work has been to do with the Stodmarsh issue, which I'm sure everyone is aware of. But I will let Brian speak for himself about the work done lobbying central government. Thanks. Over to you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. And thank you for having me. I'm a little bit earlier coming on than I would have been at the last meeting, which I think was at about 12:10 on a meeting that should have finished at 12. So, but I will take the cue from the chair that I need to be prompt. So those of you that don't know me, my name is Brian Horton. I'm the strategic housing advisor to the LEP. I've been doing that since prior to the original strategic economic plan back in 2014. But my background is predominantly public sector housing. In previous lives, I was the housing advisor to KCC, but also chief exec of Swale Housing Association and head of housing and property at Thanet District Council. And outside of my work with the LEP, I work with a number of organisations as a consultant and relevant, I suppose, to the work of the LEP. I'm also now chair of the Margate Town Deal Board. What I wanted to do, though, is talk to you specifically really about SELEP and housing. We were kind of relatively unique when LEPs were set up in taking a very early view that housing was important to us. And that was featured quite late in the work of doing the original strategic economic plan. But we worked quickly and we created a position in there which was around accelerating delivery. So it was not about trying to steal the clothes of the local planning authorities in terms of setting numbers, but understanding the local ambitions and finding ways of delivering against those by collective effort, by using LEP resource, but also using the soft influence that the LEP is able to bring to bear. And that was launched as a position with Localis as building the future, accelerating housing delivery in the southeast. Key component of both the SEP and that work was a really stretched target, a target that, if I'm honest, I didn't think we would meet, but we needed to be ambitious. It was a target that required a 50% acceleration in delivery over the period of the plan. And we needed that target to get the attention of both the officials and ministers at the time in terms of what was a a jobs and housing priority within that SEP. And remarkably, and I think down to the combined efforts of both public and private sector colleagues across SELEP, we not only hit that, but exceeded that target, having delivered in excess of 110,000 homes. Now that's important in terms of the homes provided, but it's also an incredibly large component of the SELEP economy. If you apply the kind of Treasury recognised multipliers, that's 340,000 jobs over that period. Now, we are, as a geographic area, quite a large component of Housing Delivery UK. We're in excess of 7% of what comes forward, and as a LEP area, we are the largest contributor as a LEP to the housing delivery nationally. So we're a big player at a national level and important to government on that basis. I would say that there's certainly no room at this point to be complacent, though. There is a significant impact from a whole range of factors on productivity at the moment, both in terms of labour, material cost, and some of the more recently concerns around confidence with interest rates and the other matters that we're all currently aware of. What I wanted to do, though, is say something about how as a LEP we contribute to that. We have a housing and development working group. The three mugshots on there are Jonathan Buckwell, Mark Kell, and Nick Fenton. And Nick actually is here this morning representing KMEP on the board, but Nick is also chair of the Kent Housing and Development Group, as well as the SELEP Housing and Development Group. Mark chairs Essex, and Jonathan Des developers East Sussex. What we did early doors as part of that soft influence and trying to create a permissive environment for good growth was, as a business-led partnership, engage with the Kent, as it was Kent Developers Group at that time, and look to share learning from what was a very effective forum with colleagues both in East Sussex and Essex. And I'm actually very proud of what we've achieved in establishing now what is a very vibrant community of business-led partnerships that goes across all of the LEP area. So in terms of how we do what we do as a LEP, our SELEP Housing and Development Group is again a broad partnership of both public and private, but private-led organisations that come together with that shared ambition effectively of delivering the LEP's priority of accelerating good growth. And I'm not going to go down through that list, Sarah, because I know that will take too long. So I'll keep moving forward. The forums that we established and the platform for joint working has been kind of widely recognised as probably nationally important in terms of demonstrating how both business and public sector can come together on common cause. And just to say, although housing, if you slice me through as a sort of coastal resident, you see like a stick of rock, housing runs through me. We as part of this group also concentrate on that jobs focus as well for the LEP, so commercial. So Nick, when he's talking at his group, but also Jonathan and Mark are all very keen not only to hear from the housing developers, but from commercial developers as well. And I think that the maturity of the joint working proved enormously powerful through COVID. We were able very quickly to convene across the groups to be able to share intelligence and learning from what was going on the ground. That was recognised by government and that continues. And I'll say something more about that as we go on in terms of that ongoing work. Sorry. So, thought leadership. As part of what we do, it's not just spending big chunks of capital, which we have done on infrastructure projects that have supported housing delivery, but this is very much about joining up using the strength of the LEP geography, which can be a challenge sometimes, but in these issues was a great opportunity to share learning across the counties where there are existing partnerships. And in my relatively unique position, representing the LEP and being ultimately invited across all of the partnerships as they recognise the value of sharing the learning. So the diagram on there is the network of organisations for Essex. There's very similar things in East Sussex and very similar things in Kent. And I'm relatively, probably uniquely, the only person that goes to across the three areas. So we're able to identify themes, opportunities, responses, and help to share those. And I'm very proud now that we have colleagues from Essex attending Kent, for example, the Housing Strategy Enabling Group, and colleagues from Kent go over to Essex as well. And we've helped shape the development of some of the partnerships in East Sussex with learning from both Essex and Kent. I think with leadership from Chris as chair, but also the significant interest from both Nick and Liz as the board champion, very early engaged with this 15-minute city concept through the COVID period. And we used our Garden Communities conference and the virtual roundtable sessions to both engage with that and promote thinking around that in terms of what for a long time we were talking about the new normal as part of the narrative, but I much prefer the new different, and I'm really excited and remain excited at what that does in terms of how work and communities are designed into the future. But I think part of our job is to use the luxury of being able to be strategic and at our wider level to help keep people honest about doing really great and good things into the future. And as I say, we as an area have 9, if you include Ebbsfleet, 10 of the garden communities that are recognised directly by government out of the 43. The garden communities are an important part of our major projects group. They are obviously important housing projects, but they are also significant economic and employment projects as well. So all of the garden communities are members of the SELEP Housing Development Group, and the larger ones are recognised and engaged with the major projects group. And I suppose in terms of, well, outputs, what does that actually mean? But those garden communities in the SELEP area received for this financial year just under 1/5 of the amount of money that was allocated. In fact, just over 1/5 of the money that was allocated nationally to support the development of the kind of revenue around bringing those forward. And we've had virtual, one real life garden community conference, which attracted the then housing minister. And our next event is on the 26th of April. And we're working with the developer groups and other partners. And the LEP, we are recognised as a full partner in that event, but most recently have not been making a financial contribution because of our reduced resources, but the partners involved value our input. And what I've described to Adam on occasion, my sweat equity, if you like, in terms of being able to help bring that forward. I was told that the accountable body likes outputs. And of course, a lot of what I do is not really directly linked. It's tenuous maybe, but important, certainly in my view, in terms of delivery. But we used our good offices to help develop across the 3 county areas, the county level planning protocols, that those reset the relationship between the development industry and our planners, and were recognised again then by the then housing and planning minister as being important pieces of work and ahead of the game. And we are now refocusing our attention on those protocols in terms of being relevant for what the new challenges that are coming forward. That was levelling up. Whether that remains levelling up, we were certainly looking at growth. Whether it remains growth, we will be ready, agile, and using relationships to make the case for the 3 counties and the SELEP area through that. Again, another thing that we used our soft influence and the ability to convene people was around the arguments for removing the HRA debt cap from local authority landlords. And we worked with Ashford Borough Council, but also brought in colleagues from across the LEP area to have dialogue directly with officials at that point. These were below the radar, helping the officials to understand the opportunity, and then how that was then briefed into ministers. I'm very pleased, it's a little while ago now, but the HRA debt cap was released, and that's allowed those areas that want to build to be able to do it without the restrictions previously applied. Early doors, we provided again our forum, the SELEP Housing and Development Group, as a to avoid iConstruct having to set up its own network, its own consultation arrangements, and we have retained a relationship through iConstruct through the length of that project. So I think what I wanted to do really is just hope, and I've tried to be quite quick in this, give a flavour of we meddle, but we meddle by invitation. When people ask me what I do, I often describe it now as being a housing enthusiast. And I think that you know, and we are certainly, as a SELEP, not part of the anti-growth coalition, as was described by a soon-to-be previous Prime Minister. So what we are doing is working using the good offices of the LEP to share views, to convene a conversation and a dialogue into government. And I work, and I'm grateful for the support that I get from Nick Fenton as chair of our Housing and Development Group, and Liz in terms of the inputs into the board. In terms of going forward, I've put over a number of slides, the kind of things that I get involved in, the things that the LEP are involved in. Again, so I'm not going to go through those slide by slide. In your board papers, you had the June version of this presentation. What I've done is I've updated it a little bit, and hopefully that will be made available as part of the pack for either subsequent board meeting or to board members. But I did want to say, in terms of what I'm up to now, what we're looking to do over the next year, it is in many ways more of the same in terms of supporting good growth, to talk widely to business, to share that learning in with colleagues in government. We have a position now where DLUC attends not only at the SELEP Housing and Development Group, but the three county level housing and development groups, DES, EDGE and Kent Housing and Development Group. And that's because they see the value in and trust that these are forums that are informative to them, and that are not only important to the Southeast in terms of views, but also nationally relevant. And Nick might say something about some of the feedback he's had from government about not underplaying the level of the influence we've been able to exert in a positive way. And just to say that, I suppose, in terms of how the LEP is developing within the kind of SELEP strategic network and the current delivery plan, I trust that the work that we're doing around housing and development is not only materially making an impact at an operational level, but it's also important as well at a strategic level. And I'll stop there. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Liz, too, and to Nick, and to all of those people who play a really important role in this important agenda. Councillor Wagland.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I just wanted to pay tribute to Brian and his amazing team for the work that they've done, which I think is far beyond anyone's expectations. I think meeting expectations, Brian, that would be a massive understatement. And a particular thank you for something which I think you could usefully include in your slides if you do it again, which is my bête noire of stewardship. I think to find such a collegiate atmosphere when trying to deal with what I think is probably the most difficult conundrum that's going to face a combination of the public sector and private sector after the question of delivery. I think is astonishing. I think the thought leadership has been fantastic. I'd like to particularly pay tribute to Alistair Pollock, who's actually sort of contacted each of us individually when something has been coming up and talked through with us and seen how that works. I have to say, I think this is a body which is enormously impressive, goes from strength to strength, and I'm really proud actually to have engagement with you, Brian. So thank you for that.
If I may, thank you so much, Councillor Wagland. And it makes such a difference having colleagues like yourself engaging both with the developer groups and that work we followed. I had made a note on my presentation, but I tried to keep going around. And of course, what we have done is use that platform to engage directly with the new Homes Ombudsman, which is a new service. And Alison McDougall, who's the new Homes Ombudsman, is coming to the next meeting of our estate charges and stewardship meeting, and with a view, because Alistair has primed her to have a direct conversation with you about that postbag that you have. So we're going operating at a big strategic level, but also at a direct level, hopefully that makes a difference locally. But very much appreciate the comments. Thank you. And I'll share back to Alistair the positive feedback as well.
Thank you. If anything shouts at the power of partnership, I think some of this does, and that's the point of the LEP. Absolutely. So thank you very much to you all. I'm very conscious of time, so I am going to have to move this on very quickly. I am going to just ask that we move item 7 forwards, because we have some key things that we need to agree at today's board meeting on this. So Helen, if you could be brief, hopefully all of the board members will have had a chance to read their board papers. Thank you.
Thank you. So just quickly, this report provides the usual update on the capital programme and touches on all 3 funding streams. I'm going to mostly talk about the projects which are seeking extensions to their LGF and GBF spend, but I'll just quickly pick up on a couple of other points. The report details one LGF project, the I3 Innovation Investment Loan Scheme, which is seeking agreement for spend beyond 30 September 2021, which was the end of the growth deal period as agreed by the board. Under the remaining 356,000 decision to decline the loan offer following the completion of all required due diligence and preparation of all required legal paperwork. Kent County Council are actively engaging with an alternative applicant and expected that the funding will be issued prior to the end of March. Moving on to the GBF decisions, details of all 8 projects and the reasons why additional time is being sought when the GBF funding is included in the report. I'm just going to quickly touch on a couple of points. Firstly, as would perhaps be expected, there is a recurring theme which features a number of requests for further time to spend GBF funding, and that is the current delays to the materials supply chain. Projects are experiencing extended lead-in times for both construction materials and more specialist technical items, which is impacting on the delivery programme. Mitigation measures are being applied across the programme, with materials being ordered at the start of each project where possible, but it's not been fully possible to fully mitigate this risk, and delivery of projects has been impacted. And these issues have been further compounded by labour shortages and in some cases reliance on utility companies who are facing the same challenges to complete essential work. For the most part, the projects do now appear to be progressing smoothly, with GBF spend forecast to be complete by the 31st of March 2023 as required in all cases. However, as I mentioned under the other item, there is one risk that the board should be aware of, which has the potential to impact on 2 ongoing projects, which is the Better Queensway and Swan Modular Housing Factory projects. Swan Housing are involved in delivering both of these projects. And as has been set out in the report, the regulator for social housing took the decision to downgrade Swan Housing's viability and governance grades in late 2021. Following this decision, Swan Housing announced a planned partnership with Orbit, which was expected to complete in late 2022. These factors prompted concerns regarding the ongoing delivery of the Better Queensway project in particular. Assurances were sought from Southend-on-Sea City Council by the Accountability Board that delivery of the wider Better Queensway project would proceed as planned. These assurances were provided at the September 2022 Accountability Board meeting, where it was also confirmed that the proposed partnership between Swan Housing and Orbit was scheduled to formally complete on the 1st of October. Subsequently, it was confirmed that the partnership with Orbit did not go ahead as planned, and Swan Housing have announced that they're now in discussions with Sanctuary about a possible merger. The ongoing uncertainty regarding the future of Swan Housing presents a risk to delivery of both Better Queensway and Swan Modular Housing Factory projects. Southend-on-Sea City Council and Essex County Council, as the responsible upper tier local authorities for the projects, are closely monitoring the situation with Swan Housing and are taking steps to understand the impact on their project. Further updates on both projects will be provided to the Accountability Board in November, and assurances will be sought regarding the ongoing delivery of both projects and the risk to realisation of forecast project benefits. Should either project be unable to complete delivery in accordance with the business case, return of the GBF funding allocations will be sought. Quickly moving on to other items set out in the report. As referenced under the GBF prioritisation item, the Accountability Board agreed the removal of the Langdon Place project from the GBF programme at their September meeting. The project was removed as due to delays in delivery, it was not possible for the funding to be spent on the works outlined in the business case in accordance with the required timescale. There continue to be a number of high-risk LGF projects which are subject to ongoing monitoring by the Accountability Board. The projects are summarised in the report and the main risk project delivery are identified. More detailed update reports on these projects can be found in the September 2022 Accountability Board pack. Finally, to quickly pick up on the Eastbourne Fisherman's Quayside and Infrastructure Development Project. As reported at the last meeting, the project was unable to make the full repayment due in 21-22. Therefore, the project defaulted on the agreed repayment schedule, triggering the charging of interest on the remaining balance of the loan. It was expected that a revised repayment schedule for the project would be presented to the Accountability Board for consideration in September. However, while steps have been taken to formulate a robust revised repayment schedule, additional time was requested to allow East Sussex County Council to undertake the required due diligence. A further update on the repayment schedule will be provided to the Accountability Board in November. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. So can I just double check with you that despite what you just said about Swan Modular Housing and Better Queensway, that the recommendations are still as per the pack?
Yes, they are at the moment, yes, till we get further updates.
All right, thank you very much. So are there any questions or queries for Helen? No? Okay, so I would like to ask whether we agree the LGF spend beyond the 30th September 2021 for the I3 Innovation Investment Loan Scheme project. Can I see hands, please? Okay, thank you. Agree GBF spend beyond the 31st of March 2022 for the following projects: Food Street, Eastbourne, project completion July 2022. Thank you. Agreed GBF spend beyond 30th of September 2022 for the following projects: UTC, Maritime and Sustainable Technology Hub, tendering bikes and cycle infrastructure, Swan Modular Housing Factory, Jaywick Market and Commercial Space, Romney Marsh Employment Hub, Better Queensway Southend, and No Use Empty South Essex. Do you? Marvellous. Thank you very much. Thanks for bearing with us to bring that item forward quickly. Okay, Adam, I'm going to hand over to you now for SSF project update.
Thanks very much, Sarah. So just an update on a few projects before moving on to the recommendations. So without sort of repeating all the detail in the paper, the paper talks about the Creative Open Workspace Master Plan and Prospectus, which should have completed at the end of September, but is still experiencing a few difficulties. And we're awaiting a further project change request to be tabled at the December board meeting. The Southeast Export Delivery C2 project is expected to complete at the end of October, though the difficulties with the with delivery in the with that project are set out in the report. The report also sets out the situation regarding the Building Back Better project. So we received a request from East Sussex County Council to remove the project from the sector support fund program. Ourselves at SELEP and East Sussex County Council worked with a scheme promoter to have that project delivered, but the scheme promoter pulled out and we ran out of time to deliver that project, which was is obviously a very unfortunate situation to report on. The recommendation in the paper is to endorse the request to extend the delivery timetable end date for the Accelerating Nature-Based Climate Solutions project from the 31st of October to the 23rd December. Just to be clear, this project has previously been granted an extension by myself following consultation with the board, but has suffered a serious setback with the loss of an integral member of staff, and on that basis request an additional 2 months to complete the outputs. We don't anticipate that the change will impact on the cost of the project or the benefits, and this was also endorsed at the meeting of Team East Sussex on the 17th of October as well. And that was really it, Sarah, from a sector support fund perspective.
Thanks, Adam. The board happy to endorse that recommendation. Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on now quickly to Liz Gibney, who's chair of the chair recruitment panel. Liz, you're going to brief update for us, please.
Just very quickly to say that a group of us have met to set the job description for the recruitment of the new chair. The advert has gone out through the SELEP channels and Essex County Council's channels, also through Kent County Council and East Sussex County Council, and we anticipate beginning the sifting of all the applicants, the many applicants that we anticipate applying for the new chair position in the near future. So I don't think there's anything we need to add to that. Other panel members? I'm just trying to be very quick.
Doesn't look like it.
No,
thank you.
That's it. Thank
you very much. Councillor Wagland, I can see your hand is up. I hope is this an old hand? Maybe she's not there at all. I can't see the her. I'm going to presume it's an old hand unless I'm corrected. Okay.
Sorry, Chair, it is an old hand. My apologies.
Okay.
I was just a bit slower to get to it. Apologies.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It happens to the best of us. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on now to the appointment of directors. Amy.
Thank you, Sarah. So it's quite a quick update. The main thing to note is that there are currently 2 vacancies on the board. One of these is the co-opted seat for a district, city / borough council representative for Essex, which is expected to be renominated in November. And the position of the second Opportunity South Essex representative, as Aideen has had to resign earlier this month for personal reasons. So we expect both of those to be reappointed fairly quickly. And as a result of Claire Lewis resigning, we have Lara Fox, who now joins us. And we now have Councillor Stephen George, who's replacing Councillor Ron Woodley, who left us earlier in the year. But I think that is everything.
Thank you very much, Amy. So I asked the board to note those items. Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask whether there are any other, whether there's any other business at all? No. Okay, thank you all very much for coming today. Good discussions, always good to talk through all of these things vigorously. So thank you very much to you all for your contributions, and I look forward to seeing you at the next board meeting. Finishing just in time, hurrah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.